Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being the show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Dark Matter, as well as the latest episode of Wynonna Earp. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Dark Matter, you can skip to what I say about this week's episode of Wynonna Earp. But the first thing we're going to talk about is this week's episode of Dark Matter, a very good episode where the premise of this episode is basically 3 is stuck in a Groundhog Day situation, which I always appreciate storylines like that. I always like, it's kind of like a staple in certain shows and stuff like that, and I appreciate that. Like I actually got excited. I was like, oh, this is a Groundhog Day episode. It's always kind of interesting considering the fact is I don't think I've ever seen the movie Groundhog Day all the way through, but obviously I've seen like episodes of TV shows that I watched that are based around that. Like I think the last one, I could be completely wrong, but I think the last one I saw was maybe the Haven one, especially because I had subsequently rewatched it. Was it last year? So I think that was like the last one I watched. Interesting because there's another sci-fi show, but nevertheless, what's kind of cool about this situation is the fact of the matter is like by the time the episodes start, 3's already in the middle of it. It's not like we got there and then it rewound. It's like, oh yeah, this is how 3 got. It's like, no, it's like, nope, 3's been like by the time the episodes start, 3's already been in the rotation a couple dozen times or whatever. So it's like a dozen or so times, and it's so cool. I appreciate like everything he was doing, like yep, this and that happening. It's like, yep, here I'm sticking my finger in your food and you're gonna punch me. Fine, cool, awesome. Oh, the day's restarting and everything. And I appreciate the ways he went about trying to deal with it, like getting the android to inject him with some stuff to make sure it's like, hey, I don't end up going to sleep or whatever. And he tries to stay up, but it doesn't work because even when he stays up the 24 hours, because after 24 hours, it automatically restarts. But by the time he gets 24-hour mark, he's like, yeah, I won. And he looks and he's back in his bed. He's like, fuck. And it was just so good because, like I said, it's like a very interesting approach to it, like to see someone try their best. I mean, it's a very interesting scenario to be stuck in that time loop on a ship, dude. That's very interesting. But everything he went about trying to tell everyone, like trying to prove it time and time again. Especially because he's having an android. Okay, tell me what's wrong with the ship. If I can say all that scientific stuff, you'll be able to believe me when the time comes. But he just couldn't remember it. And he's like, okay, see, I wrote it down. She's like, yeah, it's blank. And he's like, time loop, right? Of course it'd be blank. But then finally he had her teach him French. He's like, oh man, okay, I'm fine with learning German. She's like, that was French. French is good too. And that ended up being what helped him because he ended up explaining, basically she inadvertently made him learn how to say what was wrong with the ship in French. And the moment he said that, that's what got the android's attention. So it's just kind of also adding the whole aspect of the butterfly effect because it's something that's like, oh yeah, like, yeah, things are a little different every time. But, you know, the android kind of threw it out there as a theory. And I love my favorite line of hers, the episode is like, yeah, I believe that you believe there's a time loop happening. It's like, you sound so condescending, android. And you're not trying to be, you're trying to be extremely helpful. I love it. There's even a moment where it's like, obviously like the android's like, oh, you should go see Sarah. And he's like, no, that's a program. That's not Sarah. Like, who am I going to sit there and just talk to a program and everything? And you see the android kind of look down a little bit. I don't think he thought about that through. I was like, you're lucky the time loop started there because it's like, I won't want an android to remember that. That's a little hard. Like, that's a little hurtful, you know, because she is technically a programmer herself. Also, every time he tried to help out Five and everything, she's like, really? That's what you were going to say? Thanks a lot. And just walking away. He's just like trying over and over again. Luckily, he got it right on the last time. But I appreciate on the last time, like, what I thought was kind of interesting too is that the assassin kind of got brought into the loop too. He's like, I was living this day over, and so he kind of got. Well, it makes sense like the final time around because the dude, I can't remember his name and it pisses me off. The new dude, the new tabler of the team, the new guy, and he was about to like when the device he was using to bash him over the head, so that's what affected him because that's apparently what 3 was fiddling with before this all started. And the fact is that they both, like the assassin Ash as well as the tabler replacement dude, ended up like hitting that, and that ended up being what set all this in motion and stuff like that. Also, that Ash dude had a pretty cool ability. Like, it isn't specific. Basically, he can phase through things. It seems like it wasn't part of his armor. Like they're saying, like, maybe it's something a part of his body. Maybe it's some kind of enhancement he got inside of his body. I was like, oh, the fact is he can do that, and he's only wearing boxers. It must mean like a natural ability. This is like, you don't really know how people work in this system. I mean, they haven't. I mean, it's kind of interesting. Like they don't actually bother fiddling with the whole like, oh yeah, aliens and stuff like that. It's like, I mean, we don't really know how things work in like the dark matter universe, where it's. I mean, we've only seen humans, so I mean, I don't know if this all takes place in like the like Milky Way galaxy and stuff like that. So it's like other life forms other than humans. I mean, we've seen other things other than humans, but most of those have been like synthetic and created. Like it's something that 3 Point brought up in the episode. He's like, really? You think my situation is weird? I mean, the fact of the matter is, I was possessed by something, and we met ourselves in met our alternate reality self. So I was like, you gotta admit, weird kind of comes with the territory, and you're really drawing the line here. And I'm like, that's a good point. You've already been through some weird stuff already, so it's like, yeah, that kind of fits and everything. So. I also got to give mad props to Solara being a badass that she is, going toe to toe with the dude Ash. I almost was scared for a second because like the way he was strangling Five. I was like, dude, he's about to kill her. Hopefully, this will be a situation where like Three's like when I have to run up, it's like, okay, somebody hit me, knock me out, I can restart this. But yeah. God, the point I was going to make earlier, like, I mean, well, going back, I mean, it kind of fits together, so I'll go ahead and continue. Like, but Solara, like, pretty badass fighting. It seems like she's kind of like the new, like, possible replacement for Nyx or Rio, just because of the fact that she's a fighter. I mean, obviously they have their own differences, and Rio's more of a like weapon fighter, which I appreciated. The Tabar replacement dude, like, trying to use the weapons and ended up hurting himself and stuff like that. Really, really liking this dude. Very different from Nyx, Rio, or Six. So, and but the thing is, something I kept wondering through the battle, I was like, oh, he hasn't used his phasing ability. I was like, yeah, he must have to like pause to really focus on it, because that ends up being how he dies anyway, because he ended up trying to phase through the wall to get away, but he ended up getting stuck and dies. And it's like, yeah, it must take a lot of concentration to do what he does. So it's kind of sad they didn't even outright kill them. He kind of killed himself. I mean, just kind of the downside of that ability. So. But obviously, like I brought it up earlier, is the whole Sarah angle of the episode. I was wondering if that was connected to. I was like, oh, could the program Sarah have done this all to him? But I mean, obviously, it turned out not to be the case. But obviously, every time he tries to go to talk to Sarah, but he has to he pulls himself back a little bit, because I figured as much last episode. It's like, this isn't a real Sarah. This is just a programming. Just because it's weird and it hurts, because like he didn't really get to know Sarah, and that's what hurt him the most. It's like there was a version of him, Marcus Boone, with all his memories, loved this woman, got to know her, but it's like, I didn't really get to know her that long, but she knew me, and the fact of the matter is, like, she died, I wasn't able to help her and everything, and it's like, now I have this person in front of me, but you're just a program, but you have all the things that made her memories and stuff, her personality. So it's a situation of like, it leaves him conflicted, which on her side of things too is like, yeah, I don't know what this whole thing is, like, this is my reality, I'm a program, yet I'm still that woman who knows you, who cares for you. So it's a very awkward situation, but every time the time loop kind of started over again, he got an opportunity to kind of ease himself forward a little bit, like kind of pushing his like fear, like I would also say kind of a little bit of fear aside and uneasiness, and he ends up talking to her, and it seems like they are closing that gap. I'm hopefully nothing bad will happen in the sense of like, oh yeah, like her programming goes a little crazy, or that her program is actually secretly crazy and just Five or the android just haven't noticed it yet. Like almost like a Ruby repeat. Wasn't her name? No. Was it Wendy? I literally saw the name earlier too. I was looking up something and I ended up like seeing the name earlier. I don't remember. It's because I think what it is, because I'm thinking of the actress's name, Ruby Rose, the android that attacked him. God, that's gonna bug the crap out of me. I don't remember that. It was back in season 1, so, but even more so because I recently rewatched season 1 too, so it's like it should be fresh in my head. But nevertheless, I hope it's not going to be a situation like that. I mean, granted, that was a situation of it was programmed to be like that. I mean, that's another thing too. We have not come across too many of their enemies. Like that was kind of a thing back in season 1, but now I guess that the Raza is back on the map and its crew is back on the map. Like people who were their enemies have kind of steered away. I mean, maybe that would be something we'll see kind of pop up this season, but it seems like that very story like possibility kind of has taken a back seat, but there's always, once again, the possibility. So But like I said, it's just, I mean, overall, like that was a very entertaining part of the episode. Like I really loved that. But also we got like a very more serious side of the episode where we have like the android kind of using the device to kind of time travel. She wants to test it out. And then she's constantly jumping between different points in her life. There's at one point she's at the Raza, in the Raza's like, the main part of the ship, and then 3 walks in and he uses the like laser gun on her. Then she ends up being like dissected by this corporation kind of dude. He ends up like slicing her body up. He's like, oh yeah, I made it so you can't feel anything. I'm not a monster. But he has her body sliced up like that because he needs to get information from her. And then there's a situation because basically she had worked with Vincent and his people, the androids she had met. And I was wondering why they went out of their way to kind of introduce that. Like they replayed that at the beginning of the episode, kind of like, oh, previously on Dark Matter. I was like wondering what part that would play in this. I was like, is she going to use that chip or something? But I was like, no, because she ends up inadvertently helping that group later on because basically they're an android liberation group. And basically they end up hurting a lot of people, kind of basically labeled as terrorist kind of group. So that's why she was kind of being dissected and all this information being drowned from her. And then the final stop she took is she meets 5 on the Raza, but like there's no stars. She's a little bit designed differently. Her eyes red. She's got black hair. And you have like 5 being extremely old. And she's like, yeah, they're at the end of the stars and everything. It's like, where's the rest of the crew? It's like, they're gone. So whether that means they went their separate ways or, I mean, I imply gone as in they're dead, gone. But it's like you've been jumping around every point in your life. And basically, we've legitimately saw what will happen. Not this could happen, it will happen. And it seems like 5 went out of her way. She's like, I can't let you go back because you're going to want to try and chase things. I can't let you do that. And so the fact is the android doesn't mention anything, makes you think, yeah, 5 made sure to wipe her memories before she jumped back and everything. I mean, there's a lot. She's like, basically, a lot of stuff happens to us. The reason why they are where they are, and at the same time, it's like I'm thinking like, oh, the stars are going and everything. So it's like I was like, so wait, why are you still here and so much older? 5, what goes on there? Like, are you like, did something happen to you so you age slower or something? Or is it just like, because I was thinking like for the stars to have disappeared, it had to be an extremely long period of time, but maybe something happens and they kind of do a little. I don't know. I was about to see some time traveling of their own, but that's just that I'm not going. That's not the point. It seems like that was just probably a situation of like whatever goes down come like over the next decades. Because like I said, she was extremely old. Like 5 is like what 16, I think they've guessed, and she's like got to be like super old at that point because she's got like grayish white hair. And so one of the key things she pointed out was like, oh yeah, the fall of Ishida. So things don't work out for Rio. Even after everything he's done, it doesn't work out for him. I mean, granted, you still don't know how that's all going to play out. Maybe the Raza crew will track him down and end up killing him. That's why Ishida falls. Or maybe Ishida leaves his planet to suffer their fate and goes back to the Raza, or at least attempts. I don't know. I don't think there's ever going to be a welcoming back for him. Even if they find out that, like I said, that Masaki killed Nyx, the fact of the matter is 4 is still responsible for it, because if he had never come for the blink drive, Nyx would still be alive. So that's where my mentality is on that and everything. So my mindset. So I would say mentality. I mean, I'm always using that wrong, but nevertheless. So it's definitely going to be interesting because it seems like the way 5 is saying, like, yeah, a lot of stuff happened to us. Not all of it good was for us, but the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, it was all good for everyone else. So it's like, whatever bad stuff might have come their way, at the end of it, it was good for them. I mean, for the greater good. And also certain events, like everything you've seen so far, it does seem like, and it was something they set up back in season 2, because Vincent was like, no, you can't, you're a human partners that your crew will never accept you. You know, you can always find me again. So that's like very, like from the very beginning, like they've set that up in season 2 for there to be a rift created between the crew, between the android feeling like, oh, I'm just a machine to them. Like I'm not really, like in her mind, she's like, the crew accepts me for who I am, which they have, but maybe something happened. For the fact is, for Marcus to like use that gun to paralyze her like that, for her to be turned over to them. So I don't know, maybe something happens for her programming. Maybe she tries to use the chip, and maybe Vincent and them kind of manipulate her into doing something. Or, I don't know, maybe she goes a little rogue. Maybe that's even the crew. Maybe that's Marcus getting his memories back or something. Maybe he's turning against the crew. Because it's like, I think even the term kind of got thrown around like double betrayal or something like that. So obviously a lot of stuff is happening, and obviously like as the season progresses, we're probably going to be breaking down some of that. I doubt all of it, because I said that was years of stuff. I mean, granted, we don't know at what point the Raza crew fell apart. I mean, slowly but surely it's happening because there's only a few of them left, but still, like, that's sad to think about. Like, no, like, because it seems like a situation of like, no matter what you do, they're bound to head to that future, especially now that they don't know about it. So that's what that makes matters worse. Maybe it's somewhere inside of the android's programming, but it is kind of give you a precursor of like, oh, these are some things that went down. You'll kind of have to wait and see to kind of really get explanations. Like I said, the one, like, I kind of missed on a lot of the other details, but the one I definitely caught was like the fall of the Ishida family. So, I mean, another thing too is it was Five by herself. We didn't learn that she has a sister, so things definitely don't end up well in that whole situation. So that's already sad when you actually think about that too much. Not unless her sister just wasn't with her, or maybe she never actually. I mean, I like to think the fact that they introduced that storyline means that she does find her sister at some point. So, like I said, kind of about to say maybe that meant that she never found her, but it's like, nah, she probably found her. It just didn't end well, or maybe her sister just wasn't on the ship. I mean, it seems like Five was the only one that was up there, so. Whatever the situation is, like, it makes you wonder, like, because the fact that she's like, oh, Android, you're here. So it's like, either she was expecting, well, how would you expect the Android, like, how would you know that that's what the Android was doing? I mean, maybe it's like, maybe she learned later on in her timeline about the android coming to visit her at that particular point in time, and so she was waiting for it, because it seems like the android wasn't on a part of the crew. Maybe she just happened to get on the ship. It's like, but what does that mean about the android being on the ship? Was she still a part of the crew at that point in time that she ended up jumping to, or was she actually there to possibly kill Five in a moment, like a present day android left, that android ended up proceeding to kill her or something? I don't know. Because it also seemed like another thing too was that memory of like her, she was sitting down, she's crying, and Portia's there. So it's like, I mean, two is there. Well, that's the thing. Maybe that was in the past when Portia originally, well, because it was always believed that Portia made her the way she was. I mean, at least that's what Rio was saying. So, because that's what Five did say. She was like, you get to meet your creator. So now with that and the way Marcus was acting, and I threw out the possibility maybe he got his memories back, maybe something happens and Portia two needed to become Portia again, maybe that's what that was. And like, she finally like messed with the system and everything. And like, it's like, yeah, I made you this way. Because there was always, like I said, Four said like, that's why, that Portia is the one who made her like that. For whatever reason, the reasoning is there inside of her. She just kind of has to find all the information there. She just has to look inside and find it. So a very interesting development. I appreciate that story element of just being like, yeah, we're not telling you everything. We're kind of giving you little winks and nudges towards things. So when things go down, you're like, yeah, they talked about that. So it's definitely going to be interesting going forward. Not even just for the rest of the season, but for the rest of the series. Like I said, a lot of that stuff, especially a lot of the android liberation stuff and the whole thing sitting in front of two, like her crying, I think that's probably, I mean, granted, that could be in the past, but I do believe that is probably like present day stuff. I mean, because another thing we'll never know is like, I mean, everyone else has got their memories, but like the android will never get back her memories. Like, we don't really know what her time was. I mean, I guess we do to a certain extent, because of the alternate reality, we have an idea. So I don't know. Nevertheless, I'm very interested to see like where this all goes from here. So. And like also like overall like a very, very good episode from like the lighthearted, somewhat lighthearted when you think about it. I mean, obviously it's like a stress-inducing and a little crazy, the whole being Groundhog Day situation, but also like the dramatic side of like, yo, the future is not pretty at all. At least in particular when it comes to the rods. And for some people more so than others, it's kind of like the message that's kind of getting across. So. And also we have Rio at the end. Like, there was a person hooked up to a machine and everything, and he's like, yep, I'm gonna need your help to take down the Raza. So try to get back to Blinkdraw, because now he can't track them down anymore, because basically Blinkdraw was admitting something that Rio could track, but now that they've kind of settled with that, like, he can't track them anymore like that. But he still has a group of mercenaries and assassins ready to come after them, so they are going to be on the lookout, because they know probably that Rio's made a move like this, they know he will probably make more in the future. So, like I said, a lot of stuff we'll just have to wait and see how it all plays out. So, and I'm very, very excited to see how it does. And now moving on to this week's episode of Wynonna Earp, a very, very good episode, which basically the basic premise of it is that Wynonna is dealing with a monster. I heard its name, not going to catch it. Basically, it gives you the ability to make a wish, and basically this is all connected to this dude she kind of crosses paths with in Shorty's called Perry. Basically, him and his guys, like the Blue Devils, sucky team, didn't really get any wins and stuff like that. But until like 10 years ago, the coach at the time was like, yo, here's a spell, it'll help you win. And they're like, okay, they did it, but they didn't really think much of it. But scarecrow looking thing, which, is what Wynonna refers to it as. And immediately when I look at it, I'm like, does kind of remind me of Scarecrow, in particular, the Batman villain, Scarecrow. But nevertheless, basically it granted their wishes for the past 10 years. They all got something out of it. Like the Blue Devils have constantly been winners and stuff like that. I mean, really, it was just, they just wanted to win. It's just like, oh yeah, we'll pay whatever price, just make our lives awesome for the next 10 years. And their lives have been pretty awesome. But it's like now they kind of like, the price has to be paid. Like one ends up ripping his own liver out. Another ends up ripping his eyes out. So different prices. Maybe the prices represent part of their whatever it is, they wish for. Because one was like, oh yeah, to marry like a cheerleader or something, like a super pretty lady. One ended up like Perry himself. It's like, yeah, you can check me out in Forbes. Basically representing the fact that it's like he's super rich. So very interesting thing that kind of puts into question though, like the fact is of what it is. That it means it isn't something that was like, yo, like this thing just got released because of what went down with the wall. Maybe it was. I mean, maybe there's a whole situation of like it was sealed away until the door was open, and then it kind of had a little more freedom to come after them. So maybe that's why it hasn't really come after them until now. But then again, maybe that plays into a whole part of like, oh, it's been 10 years, so it's like, I guess it's one of those things that like this demon has been around, you just didn't know about it. I mean, it's like, there's a lot of things that were sealed within purgatory that just kind of got a little let loose around town because of like the whole Willow opening the doorway and stuff like that. I mean, a lot of stuff got revealed in this episode, and very interesting things. Like for one, a little more on Waverly's situation. The fact is that she's acting the way she is. I think whatever it is that's inside of her is like, piecing together everything that's happened so far. I believe it's desires. Like it reacts to some need, some hunger. Because obviously eating a bug at the end of the last episode, eating a lipstick in this episode, it seems like it's like whatever is inside of her is feeding off of that. And it also likes shiny things. Don't know what that's about. Maybe it's like I said, like desires take on many different forms. For some people, desire could be wealth or all the stuff that you amass, or maybe a gluttonous type of desire, like eating and consuming. I mean, for who? Maybe that's what this thing is. Maybe this thing is literally the embodiment of the 7 deadly sins or something like that. The way that I could be like totally full of shit on that, but it's like, they can fit there. I mean, like lust is one thing, especially the way she kind of goes after Nicole pretty hard and everything. Like it's like, oh, no matter what, her eyes kind of flare up, and then she kind of turned to Nicole and like start making out with her. Plus the whole cheerleader thing in the beginning, I was like, wow, that was like, and then she's like, oh no, this is supposed to be, oh, this is kind of like, no, this isn't for everyone, this is kind of your thing. She's like, trust me, Waverly, that's everyone's thing. And plus the fact that she wasn't wearing underwear too, that was like, wow. It's always interesting that her sister ends up catching her, and Wynonna ends up catching her in those very compromising positions like that. It's just like, that can't be good for the relationship. But you always feel bad for Nicole, because Nicole's like, okay, Waverly, I gotta go there. Okay. But that seems definitely what that is. Like, it seems like a possibility. Like, it does seem like desire is like the main focus of whatever this whole situation is. I mean, I guess arguably could say like maybe like pride or wrath could be what she went after that dude Tucker. Man, is he a douchebag. Like taking upskirt shots of girls and stuff like that, and like Nicole calls him out for it. He's like, oh yeah, but you were making out with your girlfriend. It's like, oh, should that be like really, whatever, spouting his BS. Mainly because it's like she's wearing her uniform, and that's what Nicole was like, what are you doing, Waverly? I'm in my uniform. It's like super unprofessional for you to be making out with me like that and everything. So it seems that basically the Gardner family is kind of like the golden family of purgatory. So like Tucker kind of gets away with a lot of the stuff he does, but he's trying to press charges against Nicole and everything, which Needley is like, yeah, you need to learn how purgatory kind of works and everything, which Nicole was like, wait, what are you talking about? He's a piece of crap. But he's like, no, he's a gardener. Now, because like it seemed like Waverly was trying to warn her too, but Nicole didn't really want to listen. I mean, this was a big episode for Nicole too, because it's like, wait, this dude Bryce ended up killing him, ended up in a situation. It's like, no, we don't need to give this to Black Badge. This is clear cut our case. But like Needley's like, nope, and passes it off to Wynonna. So there's a little animosity there, especially because like Justin's like, I mean not Justin, Jeremy's like, is Nicole always like that kind of mad when she kind of passes off cases to us? Once again, none of my business. Still kind of being kept out of the loop because it's like, because even Wynonna, because he's even asking Wynonna, like, oh, you wouldn't know where Dolls is, right? And then she's kind of looking at him like upset and everything. He's like, okay, never mind. Because for him, it's like he's stuck in his town, like much like Lucado, but I mean she's off doing whatever it is that she's doing right now. She kind of got called back to home base to do something, personal matters, whatever the case may be. But Jeremy's stuck here until this whole situation is settled, much like her. So the moment Dolls is found or whatever, maybe that will help him. Like maybe he can turn Dolls in as a way of like, oh, getting out of his end of the contract and being able to kind of go back to just working at a lab or whatever. So seems like that might be the case. But I do appreciate the fact is that Needley like kind of breaks it down for her. It's like, okay, let me tell you this. The town is trying to ignore the fact is that there are demons and stuff walking around, which Nicole's like, are you shitting me? Like, you can't just ignore that. This is Purgatory's reality. It's like, I know, but people don't want to face their reality. No one wants to admit what's going on. It's a lot easier just pretending like it didn't happen. So because of that, Neely's kind of, a little more lax in the situation. He's like, he kind of breaks it down for her. He's like, the reason why I worked so hard to get you here is because I want you to be my replacement. Like, yeah, Purgatory is a crazy place and they're going to need someone to keep it in line. And that's you. Like, you think I'm making you do all this minimum stuff just because it's like, oh, me trying to punish you. It's like, no, I need you to learn the ins and out because when it's time for me to retire, I want you to take over. Someone's got to protect Purgatory basically from itself, almost to an extent being like, basically make sure Purgatory doesn't really get too crossed up with this whole like everything that Black Badge does, like the paranormal, the supernatural, demon sides of things. Kind of keep those two worlds separate. That's kind of your job too. And the gardeners kind of fall into that category. But it's like, for him, it's like, play the game smart. And the fact of the matter is, play a long game. He's been building up a file against the Gardeners for a very long time. You actually feel bad for Mercedes on two fronts. One, just having a family like that. Her sister, I mean, we really haven't got a feel for her, but definitely like her brother Tucker is a piece of work. And also like, but I mean, it does seem like it seems like Mercedes has helped out in the past dealing with Tucker and his pervertedness. It's like, you are literally the town pervert. But it seems like the other sister really helps out a lot more with that whole situation, bailing him out and stuff like that. Just because they are the Gardeners, they feel like they can do whatever they want. So it's like, my name goes a long way. Don't you know who I am? Oh my God, you knocked my down my phone. Oh, you broke. You better hope that's not broken or I'm going to sue you. Like, it's like, you're such a piece of shit. But I mean, even more so what I was talking about in this episode, feeling bad for Mercedes, it seems like she dies at near the end of the episode because those shadow things, one puts his hand in her mouth and all we hear is a neck snapping sound. Especially because she's like, oh, getting all pumped up because obviously she saw like Wynonna kick those dudes' asses at the school because she wanted to get the trophy and they weren't listening and she kicked their jock asses and then like that is one awesome. That is one. What was her exact word? It was something like that is one bad awesome bitch or something like that. Just and Wynonna walking out all badass like, yeah, kicked their asses and stuff like that. I was surprised she don't suffer any ramifications. They are like technically high schoolers. She's law enforcement and everything, but then again it's like, I mean, I doubt anyone's going to want to admit the fact that they got their ass kicked. Oh my God, I get my ass kicked by a girl, that chauvinistic attitude type of situation. Well, not even chauvinistic. What's a more appropriate word? Misogynistic is the word I'm looking for. But poor Mercedes. I was thinking like Mercedes was going to play a bigger part in this. But then again, Mercedes is probably just like the beginning of it. Like it seems like their family might be the center of whatever this situation is. Because the building that she was trying to build up on and everything, that just happened to be whatever, like that seal that got broken happens to be under there and everything. So it's kind of like their family is definitely connected to this in some shape or form. Whether they know it or not, I don't know. because Tucker was making this whole comment about, oh, like, the fact of the matter is I can get what's mine even without you. All I have to do is wait for you to die. So now she's dead. Does bring up the question, like, what does that mean going forward? Because obviously, like, she's the one that kept him from going after Waverly as well as Nicole. But now that she's out of the picture, what does that mean for him? I mean, last thing he wants to do is go after Waverly again, because the whole, like, eyes and things. I mean, being stupid strong, lifting him up and everything. Oh, side note too, we do find out that Waverly isn't like 100% controlling that. It's not like, I was thinking like that was happening and she just wasn't saying anything. I guess I kind of figured that she wasn't remembering, because she's like, oh yeah, I need to get my lipstick back. And Wynonna's like, I gave you your lipstick back. I handed it to you earlier. Don't you remember? She's like, oh, all right, I'll go find it or something. It's like, she doesn't remember when she goes all black-eyed like that. So... And that's actually something Nicole tried to bring up to Wynonna, but Wynonna wasn't, like, because Wynonna kind of took it the wrong way, because it's like, for her, she's like, she doesn't want a repeat of the whole Champ situation, because it's like, you, like, sacrificed so much for Champ, you kind of, like, lowered yourself to, like, be on this, like, it's like, oh, he's playing a video game, and you'd rather do that than go accept being valedictorian or something like that. It's like, he basically is like, I don't want you doing the same thing with Nicole. Like, I want you to be you. I don't want anyone to have to change you. You're awesome the way you are. You take pride in being an Earp, which then kind of pisses Waverly off, which is like, for one, until you stop dating psychos, how about you, like, kind of mind your own business and don't worry about my relationship? Which is like, you know, Nicole is very different from Champ, but it's still a situation of like, she didn't want Waverly to compromise who she is just for another significant other. Like, you know, it'd be like, not saying that Nicole is the same as Champ, but she doesn't want Waverly to kind of make that mistake of like, that doesn't necessarily just fall on them. That's something about Waverly where she's like, at least in Wynonna's eyes, being like, oh yeah, like, I had to give everything to my significant other and not leave anything for myself, kind of thing. Which kind of makes, you know, Wynonna a little pissy towards Nicole. There's always been a little bit of some, like, they never really clicked. They hung out and stuff like that, but it was like they've never really bonded or anything. Like, I am like the girl in your sister's life and everything, but it's like you kind of like treat me like I'm like a stranger, like I'm not a part of all this and stuff like that. I mean, we'll probably be seeing her kind of interact a lot more with Wynonna, considering the fact is that like Needy was like, okay, yes, you can go without the khakis, even though they've been such a big staple and stuff like that. And also from time to time, if, you know, you can get involved, if, you know, with the whole black badge situation for the sake of like, yeah, you know, gotta, you know, they're going to need your insight in that whole situation. Which is definitely going to get complicated the moment Lucado gets back, because she's, you know, because she already treats, well, no, she treats Waverly like a coffee, like, oh yeah, just go get coffee. So what does that mean for Nicole? Like, was she like, oh, we don't need local bumpkins or some crap like that? I could kind of see the writing on the walls in that particular situation. But Nicole tried to bring it up to her. It's like, haven't you noticed that Waverly's a little different? I was like, I liked her because she was so sweet, but lately she's been a little, you know, hardened and cold. And it's like, oh, like me. And that's what kind of pissed her off, because it's like, oh, you're saying my sister's like, oh, like she's turning into a terrible person like me or something like that. So it's like a double-sided insult to like Wynonna. But, you know, after what Nicole was doing, protecting Skip and everything in the episode, kind of getting tossed around by the monster, is like, yo, Nicole is down. She's pretty awesome. She's a toughie. So it's like, I'm going to cut her a little slack. It's kind of what Wynonna's kind of feeling at this time. And kind of going alongside those, the whole situation with Mercedes, I wonder, will Wynonna find out about that or not next episode, or whether that's going to be something like that gets kind of pushed under the rug, or will anyone realize it is like a demon thing or not? Because they did, like I said, she was in the vicinity of them, because they went after her like last week anyway. So they were in it, like I said. So it definitely seems like they are heavily tied to the Gardeners. Maybe they need a sacrifice. Maybe this has something to do with their parents, during like their fortune and everything. You know, like I said, like it's so sad because Mercedes is like trying to turn things around. She's like, "Yep, I'm gonna follow Wynonna's example and stuff like that." But nope. Shows you kind of the downside of coming back home. But another big thing we ended up finding out is finally found out what Doc was up to. Not what I thought it was. I thought like, oh, this had to deal with them getting out from underneath Black Badges. Like, no, this is specifically about helping dolls that basically working with Rosita, which I think last episode I called her Regina. I guess you can understand some of the slip up there, but still, that was completely idiotic on my part. But nevertheless, Rosita, super smart lady, and she is re-engineering the thing that makes it the medicine that dolls takes to keep that monster side of him at bay. And it's like, holy crap, wow, wasn't expecting that, Doc. Like, I knew he was doing something good. I figured it had to have something to do with the whole situation with Wynonna and their situation being under Black Bat. I thought, like, that's what this was all about. It's like, nah, what this is all about is helping out dolls and everything. It seems like this is what him and Doc talked about, but Doc kept it on a hush hush because the last thing he wanted is Wynonna being involved. Because if Wynonna gets involved, caught up in all of this situation, they'll, she can be in danger. They'll probably kill her. But in Doc's case, it's like, well, he's expendable, but Wynonna isn't, at least, in Doll's eyes. So I didn't realize that Dolls told him not to tell her. I thought, though, maybe, like I said, going back to it, maybe this is associated with, like, maybe that's who he was supposed to talk to. Maybe Rosita is who he was supposed to get in contact with, because it seems like this whole thing was his plan to begin with. So, and now I'm sitting here thinking about it, like, I don't know why I didn't correlate in my head that these are in fact the things from, because now I'm sitting here thinking about it, because their fingers. I think that's the reason why they showed their fingers, because I don't think we'd ever seen them previously to that. Those shadow things, we finally saw their fingers. So these are the things that escaped from Black Badge that grabbed the dynamite and blew up. So whatever the hell they are, they haven't been here always. They aren't like something that recently got in because of the wall. It's like they recently got in. Well, it makes you wonder, like, is it easy for demons to get into purgatory? Did they like latch onto one of them, and then that's how they got? Like, did they latch onto one of the group and follow them back to purgatory, or can they cross the line because they are, like, are revenants the only ones that can't actually lead the ghost triangle? Is that what that kind of alluded to? Maybe if you're from the outside, you can go in, or maybe it's just because of what they are like. I don't know. It does bring up a lot of interesting things. You know, Doc is being very honorable, and he's doing all of this because he cares about Wynonna, because he knows how much this whole situation means to her. He knows how much Dolls means to her, because she also described, she was talking to Perry in this episode. He's like, yeah, I'd have, it's like, yeah, your sister was right. I'd have to be like super broke for things kind of work between us. She's like, no, you wouldn't have to be. It's just, I'm the one that's broke in this situation. It's like, that's so sad of her to like talk about herself like that, but it's just like, she's not herself without Dolls around. She just can't feel whole or okay with herself. Luckily, that's kind of another that it's kind of pushing that supernatural element of like saving people. Like, I'm trying to sit here and think. They didn't come up too often last season in the situation of having victims and stuff like that. That seems like a big part of this season of like, oh yeah, there's got to be people who die so that you can get started on a case. Doesn't always seem like that's necessarily particularly the case last season. There were some casualties and stuff like that, but I don't remember it being like as crime scene-y as it is now. I mean, there were situations last season, sure, but it didn't seem like. I guess because it's a different breed you're dealing with. Those were revenants, and these are just out and about demons and monsters and stuff. So I guess it's a different breed and everything. So we do see that Dolls is back, but unfortunately for him, the first person he ran into is Waverly, and it seemed like she was putting all that silver stuff together. For what purposes, I don't know. We still are in the dark about Waverly's whole situation, but now that Dolls is back into everything, he probably will inform the others, like, yo, something's up with Waverly. You need to check her out. It's definitely going to be interesting going forward to see, like, because I'm sure other stuff is going to slip out too about her not being, like, maybe the only reason why this happened to her is because she isn't an Earp. If she was an Earp, maybe she'd be able to fight it or something like that. Like I said, it puts it in a situation of like, technically that puts like the group at like possibly two monsters. One being like, no one in this group is like, there are like, I think the only normal person in the group is Lucado and Jeremy. Everyone else, obviously, like Wynonna being an Earp, Waverly not being an Earp but being an Earp, and whatever she is, Doc being immortal, and Dolls being the thing that he is, I mean, which we still haven't dived too deeply into, which I'm guessing we're going to kind of get back to soon enough and be like, yo, explaining what he is and how it really came to be. Oh, well, we do know, because we learned from Eliza that they're an experiment, but like for what, I mean, like I said, I'm sure it's like some super soldier program and stuff like that, but what exactly they did to them, we just kind of have to wait and see. Like I said, a very, very good episode. This is actually one of those few occasions I kind of didn't even talk about it at all, but the monster itself was actually dealt with without killing it. I mean, mainly because they needed the demon blood for the purposes of like, hey, we need it as part, fresh demon blood as part of recreating this medicine and stuff like that. So it's definitely going to be interesting because they're on a clock here because they have to make sure that Dolls, the medicine, well, like Dolls doesn't go full blown monster because if, like Eliza said, like if he goes too far, he has to be put down. So I mean, and if they're able to do this, they won't ever have to worry about Black Badge again. They'll be able to put him in a situation like once they're kind of able to clear everything, and it's like, yo, once we are able to make it so that Dolls is no longer wanted by Black Badge, then we'll be able to like supply him with the medicine ourselves. We won't ever have to worry about him having to cater to doing whatever Black Badge orders him or us to do just so that he can get the medicine. If we can make it ourselves, it's all easy peasy. But it does also seem like Doc doesn't 100% trust Rosita because it's like, yeah, I don't want you to try and use this like monster and make wishes of your own. She's like, do you think I'm stupid? He's like, no, it's the complete opposite. It's because I know that you're smart. So what that connection is, we still don't know. So like I said, it's definitely going to be very interesting going forward to see how all this kind of turns out. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.